Right on, writers, and welcome back to the Books by Adrian author platform. This is Typewriters Podcast, where we let our hair down a little bit and debrief a bit with this week's guest from Livestream Sunday. Thank you so much for being here, everybody at home. Whether you're watching this during the premiere on YouTube, whether you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, or watching/listening on Spotify. You can do both on Spotify. Regardless of how you're ingesting this content, thank you so much for being here and for subscribing. If you're not yet subscribed or following, please do so. It helps us out with the algorithm and all that kind of good stuff. I'm your host, Adrian Santiago. If you don't know, I'm writing a novel, and it's coming out early next year. It's called Mythic Shadow of the Spark, and it is a murder mystery set in a sci-fi fantasy world, which should prove lots of fun to market. All right, we're not going to waste too much time. We're going to get Mr. Jack Adkins out here. And for anybody who missed Livestream Sunday, that's always available for replay on the YouTube channel, Books by Adrian. So go on over there and make sure you check that out. Without further ado, welcome back, Mr. Jack Adkins.
Thank you very much.
Hello again, sir. Yes, hello. I thought that flew by. The hour just flew by on that one.
Yeah.
I hope you had a good show.
Yeah, that was great. That was cool.
It was fun. I liked it. I feel like we probably missed out on a bit of chat room stuff because, like I said, my Wi-Fi got wonky for a second there, and I lost the chat. And then when it came back, it was looking a little thin. So I was like, I don't know. YouTube has been kind of fishy these days with that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, on this podcast, we tend to talk a little bit more about like the craft of it all, the actual like behind the scenes and whatnot. And so, where did the Dragons of Dorwine, world, where did that whole idea kind of come from for you? Was it strictly from your love of fantasy and D&D? Was there something, you mentioned write what you know, so was there something in your own life that kind of sparked it forward? Where did that whole series come from?
A big part of it for me, one of the series that really captivated me as a young, I don't know, probably 12, 13-year-old, was the Dragonlance Chronicles. And I love the world of Dragonlance, and I love playing Dragonlance in D&D. And with 5th edition coming out in 2014, 2015, I've waited and waited and waited for Dragonlance, and it never came. So I wanted to run some of my own stuff. So I said, well, I want a world full of dragons to create for my D&D campaigns. How can I do that that's kind of different? And I got this idea about a low magic system. And, you know, magic is very limited. Only a few people can use it. And I thought, well, what about if only dragons could use magic? And then I had the idea that, well, it'll be contained in their blood. So without dragons' blood, you can't do anything. So I started to expand that idea where you would have people who worked for the church, because these dragons are worshipped like gods. The church is more like a bank. So they would sell. They would dole out their blood and they would sell it, and you could buy what they call a smear. So you get like a little piece of wax paper with a smear of dragon blood on it, and you could use it to power some kind of item. Or you could use it for, you could make a potion if you were an apothecary that would do a specific thing. And they very tightly regulate and control the sale of dragon blood. And the first story that I came up with was about what would happen if, for some reason, tons of it was hit in the street, like drugs. You know, it's just all of a sudden you've got a control over this market, but now it's going nuts. All the dragon blood's supposed to come through the church, but it's everywhere, and people are dying because they don't know how to use it, and they're
abusing
rebels.
it. They use too much.
Yeah, rebels are popping up everywhere because now they have power and they do all this stuff. So that was kind of the premise of the seed for the world, and I kind of built it out from there. So
that's pretty cool. Now, you did mention, though, that you mostly have, if I'm not mistaken, dragon characters and other creatures, no human characters in these first few books.
Mm-hmm.
So how are we seeing sort of that epidemic of like dragon blood hitting the streets? Like how is that sort of depicted to the audience?
So the main characters they're not dragons, they are just different races. For
Gotcha.
example, one of the characters is what we would associate as a triton. He lives under the sea, the merfolk, and he's a prince that lives there that's been exiled. Another one is kind of this sketchy half sea elf person who has some secrets. She's very secretive, and she's some kind of spy or something like that. And the main character he's half goblin. He's a goblin with red skin, very eccentric, very gregarious type of character. And the humans you see, they are workers in towns. They are, they serve all these other purposes. So they're there in the background. They exist, but there are a lot of these other races that are around, especially in the town where this black dragon is controlled. It's kind of there's a specific reason. One of the things, if a dragon makes a magic item, they can harvest the magic back out of it. So they have the system along the coast. They have people that they send to find shipwrecks or to harvest or harness these magic items. So anybody who has gills, they hire to go and delve down in to find these magic items, and they pay a high price for them. So you have a lot of those kind of characters. Humans can't do that. They have very limited abilities for that kind of thing. So
That's so cool. When I was a kid, one of the first books that I really remember resonating with was this book called Goblins in the Castle. I don't know if you ever heard of it. My second grade teacher read it to us during story time, and I just remember like being blown away. There was this idea of like they all came from a place called Nilbog, which is goblin spelled backwards. And when I figured that out, it like blew my mind. I was like, oh my god, this is incredible. And it's all these like little kids are trapped in this castle with like goblins everywhere, and they have to get out. And for a kid, like just the idea of like these creatures that were human like but were not human, and they were scary and they were kind of ugly, but they were also like funny and like mischievous, and you didn't really know how to feel about them. Like all of that stuff like really resonated with me, and it's stuff that kind of drives like the stuff that I write now as an adult. So now I'm curious about your favorite dragons. So let's start with movies. What's like your favorite dragon movie or dragon character in a movie?
the favorite dragon character. I probably like Smog.
Smog's a
I
good one.
maybe like him in the books better, but what's not like to like about Benedict Cumberbatch? I mean,
Oh,
he
nailed
does a
it.
fantastic job.
Nailed it.
I like this nefarious dragon, and I like a dragon that it's evident that the power scale between you and it is enormous.
Mm.
So I like that too, and you kind of get that sense with Smog, who, if Tolkien, he was one of the smaller of the dragons.
Yeah, and he's
um,
huge.
yeah, yeah. So I probably like him in books. Hmm. I can't even remember the name, but there was a blue dragon in the Dragonlance Chronicles book that I really liked, because kind of the attitude was, I'm here, I'm doing the things you're asking me to do, I'm blowing up these towns, but if I decide I want to go do something else, I'm just going to go do it. If
Yeah.
I get bored with all this, I'm gone. And so I like that too. Again, because it's this level of power that's so different.
That's cool. Do you tend to lean more towards the dragons who can speak and are articulate or all that, or do you like the more animalistic ones? Like I think a lot about Reign of Fire, that
Yeah.
movie with Christian Bale and Matthew McConaughey, and
Yeah.
the dragons in that movie are a force of nature. They're just they're a hurricane. Get the hell out of their way, kind of stuff. And then you have like Dragonheart with Sean Connery's voice and everything like that. Where do you fall on that kind of spectrum? What do you tend to lean towards?
I lean toward the more intelligent dragons.
Yeah, Smog, for example, right?
Yeah, and in my world, it's very common for a dragon to. They all have a second form, and they can change into whatever they want. But
Okay.
for example, they'll change into something that's most representative of their people.
Hmm.
The silver dragon, she turns into a human because most of her people are humans. The gold dragon, he turns into an elf because the majority of his people are elves, and it's a way for him to relate to them. And they also create these beings that are Dragomir or Dragon Men or whatever, that they look like mortals in scale, and they speak and they act. They're bipedal, but they're creations of the dragon, so they would look like they have leather, and they have different colors and scales, and
Hmm.
they're another level of power above a human, but it's more relatable. So those would be emissaries or ambassadors. So you would send your Dragomir out to go and deal with a rebellion in a city, or if you're having trouble with taxes, that's who you would send. you know they're a
Those
force.
damn
They're more
taxes.
relatable. Exactly. Coin makes the world go round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what about you mentioned the blue dragon in one of your favorite books. Um, what did you? Uh, you'll kind of also already answered my question. I'm stumbling over it because I was going to ask what sets your dragons aside from the rest. What makes them yours?
Mhm.
And it sounds like this kind of shapeshifter element is it, huh?
Yeah, that's a big part of it, and they are gods
They're
in
worshipped by their people and all that.
and they bestow their blessings on people by giving them, their blood. Someone comes, my son is sick, he's broken his leg and is getting infected, he's going to die. They could bestow on them blood that somebody would make into a potion that could heal them. So there's sort of this, you know divine sense to them, and they kind of exploit that to a far degree. And then the magic living in their blood is probably the big difference too. So they want to be at one with their people, but they obviously are alien creatures.
It's so cool. Now, what about outside of the Dragons of Dorwine series? What are your plans for the future after the 6 books are done? Are you going to continue in the world? Are you going to start something new? Where do you see yourself going?
Yeah, I have three continents in the world. One is very isolated, and it's kind of an Arthurian type of world where they have armor and they have armies, and they're not ruled by dragons. It's a lot more of a low magic in the sense that it's derived from the people. It's not sourced by dragons, and so those tales would be. Kind of like a period pieces, or I want to do things with castles, and I want to do things with armies. In Dorwine, there are no standing armies, because they don't want people to rise up against the dragons.
Hmm.
So in this other world, it'll deal with issues that we probably could relate to, and it'll be more like a low magic fantasy realm. And the third continent is a dystopian, post-apocalyptic. Everything's on fire. It basically takes place. The whole continent is like Mordor, so it's a terrible place, where there are demonic forces at work and some really dark stuff. So it the all three of the different places are kind of a different feel, and they'll have a different sense about them. So yeah, I like to keep writing in those worlds, and I'd like to write some urban fantasy at some point because I really enjoy me some good urban fantasy.
Yeah, mine is a bit of a genre bender, and that's one of the things that I try to do with my plan for the trilogy is to sort of expand outward that way. So, like in the first book, it's mostly taking place on this place called the Spark, which is like a moon-sized space station
Hmm.
that revolves around a planet, right? And all of the last of humanity lives on the Spark, and so the bulk of my story takes place on there, and it's very familiar. You have cities and cars and technology and all that kind of sci-fi stuff, but it's kind of urban fantasy-ish in the way because I have some magic elements that are coming into it and some characters that heavily delve into that side of things. And then in the second book, we go to the planet, and on the planet, it's basically a fantasy. It's a fantasy story over there. You have fantasy
Nice.
creatures and races and all kinds of stuff, and we'll mostly be focused on one major continent over there in that second book, along with the stuff still going on at the Spark. And then the third book, I hope to branch out to the second continent and then bring it all kind of together. All the worlds clash, so you'll have your fantasy, you'll have your sci-fi, you'll have all your epic stuff. It's going to be fun. But I love that. I love the whole creating this vast world to the point where you can tell different kinds of stories. It sounds like you have like horror stories set in one continent. You'll have your fantasy stories set in another one. I like it.
Well, your book, that sounds amazing. I mean, I like those I like to blend those things together, and but it gets hard to market things anymore.
Yes.
What is your book?
So many things. What do you like? I'll zero in on the part that you like.
Just this last week, somebody's like, I really love the found family trope in your book, and I'm like, oh, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, you were like, not intentional, but I'm glad you liked it.
My narrator is like, this is a really good young adult book. I'm like, oh man, I don't want to be a young adult. It's not young adult. Come on, but well,
yeah. See, I've had so many authors on here, and I'll share information about my book like I just did with you. And for example, last week we were talking a lot about publishing and marketing in particular. And so when I described my book, she's like, how are you even going to market that? And like, it has a romantic subplot, but I can't market it as a romance book. But the romance subplot is there for people who like romance, like all those things are there. And every accomplished author will tell you, don't make your first book part of a series. Mine's part of a trilogy. Don't make your first book genre bender. Stick with one genre. Mine is a total genre bender. Have a single point of view character. Don't have an ensemble cast. Mine is an ensemble cast. I just broke like every rule that they tell you not to do on your first book.
Yes.
And when I get to the marketing part of it, I realize why they said that. I'm like, oh, it's because you can't market a book with all these things in it.
Yeah, right to market is another really good piece of advice I totally ignored.
That's a whole I ignored that hard, and now I'm kicking myself about it. But I'm going to try to sell the hell out of this book. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, and you had Melinda last week.
I did.
She
spoke very highly of you.
Oh well, that's nice. She's great. She's really great. And I did listen to the first one, the live. I went back and listened to and watched that.
Nice.
That's great. Yeah. No, you did a great job, and she's great. But she knows her stuff.
She does.
She's a little intimidating because
she was
something, and she's like, well, "What about this and this and this? Have you thought about this?" I'm like, oh,
"Yeah,
no,
yeah." She's got a lot of those "Have you thought about?" that I was like, "No, I haven't. This is awkward. I need to change the topic immediately." You have pointed out a fatal flaw in my plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's chat offline.
Yeah. Let's talk about this later.
Yeah.
Where I can take notes.
Yes.
Yeah. No, she was fantastic. And like I said, she did speak very highly of you. So back to back 2 great episodes in a row this week. It's been great. Let me ask you this. I asked her last time, what's something that you kind of wanted to get to this week? You asked about bringing prompts. I don't know if you did or not, but if you had anything you wanted to talk about, let's try to go ahead and fit them into this episode here.
Well, this is a great segue because one of the things, like the way that I met Melinda, was through, we have this community of clean fantasy or noble bright fantasy authors that we started a Discord channel, and we've got like 200 people on it, and it kind of unites some authors with some readers, but we also have editors and artists and all this cool stuff, and it's Grimdark is fine. I read a lot of Grimdark. I read everything Joe Abercrombie writes because he's brilliant, but some people like an alternative to that. And it's hard to find it. I have people all the time like, hey, I've got a 13-year-old. Is your book okay for a 13-year-old boy? So we have this place where people can come and they can find, recommendations. They say, I'm a zero pepper person. I don't want any spice in my books. Well, we have, you
Zero
know,
pepper.
yeah, isn't that how it is? Like on TikTok. Oh man, that's 3 peppers. I can't read that, man. That's
Too
oh,
spicy.
too spicy.
The
Yeah,
Scoville level's too high.
I get that reference. That's great. Yeah, that's your book's a Carolina Reaper. I can't
Yeah,
handle
yeah.
it.
Is that blue chip? I don't want it.
No, no. So people can come and they can say, I want some fantasy, and I like some Tolkien type stuff that doesn't have a lot of the, because some of these books that I read that I'm like, man, this book is so well written. I hate every character in it. I mean, they're just these deplorable people. Um, but the book is really good. But sometimes you don't want that. So that's how I met Melinda, and we created that community, and so that exists. If anybody is interested in,
I'll tell you what. Send me the
some of
link, and I'll
those,
make sure to put it in the description for this episode. It goes up on Thursday, so just get it to me before then. No
all
problem.
right. Discord is a little bit of a barrier because some people are like, but
Yeah,
it's simple, and we're pretty friendly to help people.
I'm
You
on one
know,
myself. I have some author
yeah,
pals on AuthorTube that frequent a little server as well. So yeah, I'm familiar. It's such a valuable tool. We have a
yeah.
sprint channel on ours, so we can sprint in there and support each other while we're
Oh
writing our
yeah,
novels and
that's
stuff
what
like
we do
that.
too. Yeah, we've
Yeah,
got a Sprint channel that's very helpful. Um, and it's the other platforms didn't really work. Facebook didn't work because we
yeah.
couldn't chat. And I use Slack at work, which Slack is basically if you took Discord and made it all like a white theme, that's it. That's all it is. The exact same thing. Like Discord is gray, Slack is not. That's the only difference. Um, so
It's funny.
yeah, so that was something that I wanted to mention too. Um, and something I didn't bring up in marketing was Kickstarter is something that I did for the first time starting in October
Okay,
because
how'd
the
that go?
marketing campaign it finishes on November 1st. I got funded. I'm double funded, so I set the bar kind of low, like $500, but I really wanted to pay for narration for book two because it's insanely expensive. But it's been great, and I have some new fans. People have discovered, people have come in and bought the ebook and then come back later and they're like, no, I want both books or I want paperbacks. So I never expected that. Um, so as far as marketing goes, I use BackerKit as well as Kickstarter, and that has been phenomenal for marketing because I can communicate with people, and then after the campaign's over, I can still sell stuff to people, like a store. So that's been surprisingly um, good, and it's a different marketing that I didn't foresee. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, I was terrified. I mean, when I signed up for Kickstarter, I was like telling my wife about it. I felt like I was telling her that I just bought a llama or something because I'm like, I don't know, like I don't know what I'm doing. This is crazy. So
it's um it's an intimidating world out there online for
yes,
self-published authors these days. You don't really know what's going to work best for you. When I first started doing this author tube thing, I was doing it because I wanted to write a novel, and I had tried writing things before and kind of fizzled out, or in one particular case, I wasn't a good enough writer to pull off what I was trying to pull off with it, so I had to like set it aside and
hmm
do something else. And so I was focused on writing this novel, and I was introduced to AuthorTube, or the idea of it anyway, through Jenna Moresi. She's one of the more popular author tubers on the platform.
yeah,
900,000 subscribers or something crazy like that. She's huge, right? And so she has, excuse me, she has this story of being in I want to say it was accounting. It was a numbers based profession where she was
yeah,
doing math every day and hating her life, and she didn't want to do it anymore. She was making money. She was making good money. She was doing great, but it wasn't making her happy, and she left that to go do this, and started her AuthorTube channel, put out her first novel, marketed it exclusively through her AuthorTube channel.
hmm,
Basically, like, she did very little marketing outside of it. She put so much work into building up her platform online that she doesn't have to go anywhere else. Her audience is there, and she's marketing to her audience, and she's selling books like crazy. And I'm looking at that going, I can do that too, like I can do the same thing. But it's tricky, she's got her Patreon going on. Patreon doesn't work for every author. It didn't work out for me.
Yeah.
I tried it. I ran it for years, no success with it. I finally killed it very recently. So there's a lot of like trial and error, a lot of like figuring out where to go about it. I thought about the Kickstarter thing as well. That was one that I was scared to start because of audience numbers. I figured, well, I have to have a huge audience to begin with if I'm going to be doing the Kickstarter thing. So how did that go for you? I'm assuming you've been putting out books for a little while now. You already had a little bit of an audience, at least before you started the Kickstarter thing. You said it turned out better than you expected. What did you do with the Kickstarter? Did you promote it anywhere? How did that go?
So a few things that I learned is that it's a different group of people that you're marketing to on Kickstarter, because there are people who just troll Kickstarter wanting to buy things. And I figured this out because there's a guy named Francesco Tirani, and I'm going to say his name because I think this is secretly somebody else, that he backed my project, and we're friends or something. I'm not sure how that works, but every day he's backing 3 or 4 projects, and I'm like, this is a whale. This is somewhere. But there are people who are like, no, I don't want to go on Amazon and pay $15 for your $13 for your book. I want to pay you $25 for the exact same book to have you sign it and put a bookmark in it and send it to my house. I didn't know those people existed. So I brought my little group in, but then people just started showing up. And beforehand, I did some Facebook ad, and I made a landing page through Kickstarter, and people just started jumping on this. And I was looking at these names, and I'm like, don't know these people, don't know them. They're not on my mailing list. So that was the surprising part. You're muted still.
That's so interesting. Thank you. I've seen. Oh man, muting myself made me lose my train of thought. No, I was gonna say. I knew that there are people out there who do that, because I'm on Ko-fi, where you can like commission people to do a particular project. I make animations and stuff. I don't know if you noticed it.
Yeah, those are great.
Thank you. So I open myself up to commissions. If people want animations for their channel, if they want a book trailer or anything like that, I can make all kinds of stuff for them. And I had 2 different guys show up and were like, hey, I want to donate some Bitcoin. And I'm like, I'm not really into the whole like Bitcoin thing, man. Like, if you want to buy a video or whatever, he's like, no, like I just got like a crap load of Bitcoin. I don't need it. I just like donating it to artists who like are doing something cool, and I think you're doing something cool. So here's 0.01 Bitcoin, which translated to like $2,000 at the time. And another guy like 2 weeks later, same thing, sent me 0.01 Bitcoin, and suddenly there's another $2,000 sitting in that account. And I'm just like, it's bananas. Like, people are just out there like just wanting to support, independent artists and people doing something for themselves. It's such it's the Wild West out there on the internet.
Yeah, it is.
So much is happening these days.
Finding the right groups of people help. There are a couple groups on Facebook that have been just, for as far as Kickstarter goes, I made my preview and I put it up, and people were just like, bro, no, scrap that. Here's what you need to do, and giving me all this advice that turned out to be just fantastic. I mean, this is advice I would pay thousands of dollars for in a class.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, I want to raise money for my audiobook, so I'm going to put my audiobook up there. They're like, no, don't do that. Nobody cares about audiobooks. Raise money for your audiobook, that's fine. Here's what you need to put up there. They want physical stuff. come up with weird stuff and put it in a box.
Stuff you
People
can
will
ship
buy
to
it.
their house and they can open up
Yeah,
like a Christmas present. That's what they want.
yeah. I got a box that's called the Phoenix Crate. It's C.J. Brightly is an author, fantasy author, and she puts together a box. And I'm like, man, people are going nuts over this thing. What is it? So I bought one. It's like $34 or whatever, and it shows up and it blew me away. One, the box is beautiful. That's cool. Open it up. Oh, cool. There's a book in it. That's what I was expecting. But then there was all this neat stuff. There's a little bag of coffee. Oh, wait, this actually ties into the story of the book I just wrote and has some connection. I'm like, wow, little
Huh.
vinyl stickers. It just I won't say it's junk, but it's not stuff that I need in my life. But I was so excited for it.
Yeah, it's stuff that makes you happy. You open it up and you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh man, this is awesome." That
So
sounds so
yeah.
cool. I'm learning so much these last couple episodes. Yeah, Melinda last week opened my eyes to the idea of newsletters written by your characters, and I'm already toying with that because I'm just like, that's such a cool idea for like number one for marketing, number two for not having a boring newsletter where you're just
Mhm.
telling them that you're putting a thing up or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like to actually have a little more direct interaction with the audience itself too, like the characters speaking to the audience is kind of interesting. There's a meta thing
Mhm.
happening there's so much. And now this idea of like the box, like immediately I'm thinking, like when I release my book, have a nice like box, that like a special edition box that they can buy. It has a copy of the book, has a t-shirt in it, maybe
Mhm.
a poster or something that they can put on the wall, some bookmarks. Like, yeah, like that
Their
sounds
access
awesome.
card. How cool would that be to get like a little magnetic strip card? Doesn't do anything, but it has like the symbol of
Yeah.
of the spark or something cool
Yeah,
like that. I
yeah,
mean,
like a
just
little like, yeah, that's
that's
a
what
good idea too.
see, I opened this box and all of a sudden I had all these ideas and I'm like, wow. Um, Melinda talked some about her finances and all that. Did she get into bootstrapping
I don't
releases?
believe so, no.
Okay, because I didn't listen to the second portion, the typewriters. She has this. She's going to put together a series of videos, and hopefully, I get to help because it sounds phenomenal. But it's for new people who have zero money.
Hmm.
How can I put together just? How can I do as much as I can by myself and as cheaply as possible? Make a release with the idea that any money that I make from this release is going to go into the next one. And it's fascinating to hear her talk about that. And
That's cool.
she's really good at it. So yeah, that was another thing that I hoped she would get into, but I didn't think she had.
I mean, along that very topic, and what we were talking before, with so many different like jobs that we need to accomplish as
Yeah,
independent authors these days, and more than that, the tools that are available to us. Some of these AI covers that are coming out are actually really good. Mike
yeah,
DeFrench is one where all his covers are AI covers, and they're pretty darn good.
yeah.
Where I would have paid money for an artist to make that for me, and he made it for free in an AI engine.
Yep.
And just the idea of that being a possibility for us these days, we're living in the golden age of
Yeah.
independent authors, man. Like we really need to take advantage of all these things. That's
Yes.
crazy.
And we've got to work hard to distinguish ourselves.
Yes, there's so
That's the
much out
thing.
there. One of the things that I'm dealing with right now is I'm going through the whole cover design situation,
Yeah.
and part of my problem is that the the best design pitch that I've gotten so far is one that I also turned down because the idea was to deal to approach it like a movie poster.
Mm.
So you would have kind of a scene at the bottom third of the image where you would have like the characters walking down a dark alley at night, and like you get that kind of like killer stalking a prey murder mystery kind of deal. And then you have like the big title across the middle, and then across the top you have one area where you see like the planet with the space station around it and all that, and gives you the real like sci-fi fantasy feel. And then on the other side of it, the three main characters, like their floating heads kind of dealy, like a Marvel
Mm.
poster. And I'm like, that's the best pitch that I've gotten so far that accomplishes everything I want to accomplish. But that's not going to make people stop when they're scrolling on Amazon and the image is this big,
Yeah.
because with all those little pieces to it, it's just going to get lost in the shuffle. Like, I need something big and splashy that, like, while you're scrolling, makes you stop and click on it and read the thing. And so, like, the idea of this big flashy image, like the book cover is the main source of marketing for an author. that's your whole marketing
Yeah.
scheme is the cover. So that's what I'm dealing with these days, and just the idea of like it needing to look good this big
Yeah.
on somebody's phone when they're doing this.
Yeah. And it's hard for science fiction because you
Yeah.
have to communicate this is science fiction. You have to
Yeah.
communicate that. So
And in my case, the plot being a murder mystery, you also have to communicate that, because
yeah.
while it is a science fiction world,
Mm-hmm.
it's not really a science fiction story. It's a murder
Mm-hmm.
mystery story. We got serial killers and a detective and that kind of thing. And so like you got to get that across, but it's not just a murder mystery. I can't just market it to the murder mystery guys, because it's very
Yeah.
sci-fi fantasy. There's magic, there's technology, there's all kinds of stuff in there. So like yeah, it's a challenge. I'm trying to get like all three genres represented in one image,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the big challenge, you know. And incidentally, I toyed a little bit with some AI cover ideas, and some of them came out pretty good. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm gonna use any of them, but I looked at one where I was like,
Put that in your pocket just in case.
just gonna hang on to that one, because
Uh-huh.
if nobody else comes through for me, that's my backup plan right there. That's a good one. So it's bananas nowadays, man. It's crazy out there.
And what you're describing kind of reminds me of The Expanse, where you really are following this cop trying to solve a mystery, but it's galactic. You know, this is a really big thing. So
well, the whole kind of idea behind it for me was I'm a huge fan of George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire, and a lot of people forget that the whole like catalyst, the inciting incident for the main plot of the first book is a murder mystery.
Yeah, the hand got killed or died.
Yeah, who killed
Seriously.
John Aaron?
Yep.
That's the whole that's what kicks off this whole first book, and the idea that this fantasy epic starts out with a murder mystery, which by the way we don't get the answer to until like book 4 or something crazy like that, and it's like mentioned in passing. If you're reading casually, you don't even realize that like, oh, there's the answer right there. So like that's kind of where I was coming from a little bit with my book, where like this idea of like it's a genre world, but I'm telling a very focused murder mystery story with these ensemble characters.
Yeah, the cover that's tricky, but I look forward to seeing what you come up with, because that's cool.
It has to be big. It has to
pop.
Has to pop.
Yeah.
Has to look like a big event, and it has to set up a theme for the whole series, because I already have the titles for the next 2 books. I have broad outlines for them. I haven't like really like gotten into breaking the stories, but I know where they're going, and I know what the series is as a whole. And so whatever I settle with, I'm going to continue that same theme, that same vibe for the next 2 covers. So that's another thing, is it has to kind of set up sort of a not a status quo, but a theme, a design theme. Yeah, that's going to carry forward. It's and like you said in the live stream, book 2 and 3 are there to sell book 1. Book 1 is the foundation for everything. It's where if anybody is even remotely interested in book 2, they're going to have to go back to book 1 first. And so like you have to make that, as captivating as possible, from the story to the cover.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the challenge. That's with my covers. I just went with a dragon eye. I went through several iterations where I had characters and weird stuff, and I was like, man. But finally, it's that scroll factor. You stop because it's interesting.
That big giant reptilian eye.
Yeah. So,
did you do it yourself? Did you get a cover designer?
I had an artist do the eye, and then I did most of the design. I have a friend who's a graphic art instructor. Nice. He helped with the typesetting and that kind of stuff, and it got about 100% better after he went through and fixed all my mistakes. But even that's tricky today, because you've got, I've got a paperback that's 5x8. I've got a hardback, which is 6x9. Oh, well, on Ingram, I have a jacketed hardback, so that's 6x9 with flaps.
Yeah.
Well, I got the ebook, and I've got the audiobook.
Audiobooks are squares, like CD cases.
Yes. Yes. So you're like, man, and I wanted to put the narrator name on there really big, because he's a lot cooler than I am. So like,
part of the marketing is you get to listen to this guy's voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
I say I've sold more audiobooks because of Michael Kramer than because of me or because of the cool picture or
That's
any
a
of that
cool
stuff.
note, is choosing the right audio narrator to help
Yes.
market the audiobook. That's a good one.
I sell between 2 to 5 a week just because somebody knows who Michael Kramer is.
It's pretty
I can't
cool.
track it anywhere else. I can't, I like analytics and like trying to figure out where my sales come from and all that.
Yeah.
Can't track it from anything other than a
It's
scroll on
coming from
Audible.
him.
Like,
Yeah. I
and I've
like
done
this.
that. I listen. I love Michael Kramer, and I'm like, oh, what else has he done? So,
Well, Mr. Atkins, we're coming up on the top of the hour here. Thank you so very much for joining us. Was there anything that you wanted to let the audience know that you've got coming up, whether it's another appearance, a book releasing, anything like that? I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor if you want to update people here.
the only things I have, my Kickstarter finishes November 1st. That's Dragon Fantasy with Heart. If you're interested in my stuff, there's a pretty low gateway. You can spend $5 and get the ebook for the first book. If you want to enter that. Also, I'm doing something similar to this. If you're on TikTok and you do fantasy books on TikTok, you probably know who Dan Kenner is. He's a very funny guy. So Dan and I are going to sit down next week and it's 8:00 in the morning. But we're gonna sit down and do something similar. So that's the next thing that I've got coming up. So
it's fantastic. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and link that in the description down below for everybody who wants to check it out. I'll probably have to wait until after the event to actually do that, but I'll keep an eye out for it. And for anybody at home, all his links, all the links for Mr. Adkins are down below. So you can get to his website, sign up for his newsletter, and his Amazon link is down there as well. So you can go pick up his books. Go check them out. They sound awesome. There's more books coming. Remind me again when the third one is slated to come out. Was it September?
September 2023.
September 2023. All right. So we'll be on the lookout for that. And thank you once again for joining us, everybody at home. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you're not subscribed, do it. Don't make me tell you again. And I'll see you all on Sunday for another episode of Livestream Sunday. Thank you all very much. Right on, writers. And we are out.